Hi, welcome to something that's a bit different. You might have noticed that there are three other people here. How'd they get here? I have no idea, but they are here now. And so while they're here, how about we have a bit of a discussion? So this is a four-part series where each one of the lovely people that are right here, Micah, Angel Arts, and Chronicles of Noria, all going to like ask questions about Veilguard, and each of the other three people that are here did ask me and ask each other and answer their own questions about Veilguard in general. And that is what we're going to do today. So, if you wish to introduce yourselves, Micah, you can go first.
Oh, well, thank you. You're such a nice young man. Hello, everyone. My name is Micah. My channel is called Micah Let's Play. I do Let's Plays. Surprise. But in addition to that, I also do cosplay Let's Plays. I do discussion videos. And just like Knight said, this is a four-part series where other content creators like Noria and Angel Arts also have content on their channels, including me too. So you might want to go bounce around and say hi to everybody. But with that said, I give it back to you.
Thank you so much. And then Hark or Angel Arts, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you so much, Knight, for having us. Hi, everybody. My name is Hark. On the YouTubes, my name is also Angel Arts. I've been running my YouTube channel for more than 10 years now, and I am an LGBTQ plus player who back then didn't see a lot of LGBTQ plus YouTubers or Let's Players, at least during that time. And I thought, hey, this sounds like a lot of fun. Maybe I can contribute something into the YouTube Let's Play community that just wasn't very prevalent at the time. And I just have been doing it ever since. I do a lot of very story-based video games, especially those that are choice-based, especially those that have an element of some sort of character relationship systems. Those are the things that are really my jam. In addition to video games, I also have been posting my tabletop campaigns as well. I've done a Harry Potter campaign, 3 Dragon Age campaigns that are sequels of each other, 2 Mass Effect campaigns, a Pokemon campaign, a Harry Potter campaign, and Micah actually starred as Star in one of my unique original campaign ideas as well on my channel. So if you're interested in any of those, would love to see you all visit me. Back to you, Knight.
Oh, thank you so much, And then I'm tossing the ball back to Noria. May you introduce yourself?
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Knight. Hello, everybody. Once again, thank you, Knight, for having us. I am Noria of Chronicles of Noria. I'm certain you probably have seen me in some of Knight's live streams because I like to be there talking, and in the videos as well with my long ass comments. So I'm really happy to be here talking Veilguard. I love this game. I think that if you're watching Knight's channel, if you're watching any of our channels, then you really love this game. You really love great stories. I've had my YouTube channel now for about 6 going on 7 years. Actually, no, 5 going on 6 years. And it's been quite the most entertaining period of, following my passions. And my interests have always been like great characters, great story, amazing themes, and exploring that across different media. And that is what my channel is. So I've been doing a lot of Veilguard content of late because I really do love Dragon Age, and just the chance to talk about it with all these amazing people in this video is just making me so happy. So thank you, settling for a ride, because like Micah and Knight have said, we've had a lot of conversations on this, and I think that we've brought great energy, but we also brought a lot of topics and things to consider and better ways to appreciate the game in itself that I think would elevate your experience, whether you're just playing the game or you're one of those really lucky, superpowered people that have actually finished the game. Yes, I am surprised that some people are about to finish their second playthrough of the game. And I'm over here like, wow, to be like you, I'm in envy. So thank you once again for having us here, Knight. And we would say that in response to what we're saying in these questions and what we're discussing, we would love for you to drop your own comments and your own thoughts in the comments as well, because we would be there in each other's comment sections, responding to people's comments and hearing their thoughts and all of that. So once again, thank you for having us, Knight. We are really, really happy.
Yes.
Pleasure. And as I said before, all their videos about this sort of asking each of us questions will be in the description below. Same with the channels. You should probably go check them. I think they are, here's an opinion, okay, pretty cool. Controversial, I know. Very very wild to say, but I stand true. Okay, I stand tall. I'll die on this hill. Anyhow, let's get to the questions in question. So, first question is, and I think this is a fairly important one to ask regarding sort of Veilguard's release and the context it is for BioWare before and after. How important do you think Dragon Age the Veilguard is to BioWare? And we can start with Micah, if you please.
Well, first and foremost, thank you, Nate. I appreciate that. Honestly, I think, how do I put this? If you are a fan of BioWare and the games that they've created throughout the years, and I don't just mean Mass Effect as well as Dragon Age, but also the Star Wars games, which I've never played, their first two Baldur's Gate games, which I've never played, you know how incredibly talented the people are at this company. And even with a lot of the talent that once was there is not there, to say that Veilguard is a massively important game to BioWare would be an understatement. We unfortunately all know the history BioWare has had with Andromeda and its following Anthem. We know those games were not commercial successes for a company of this scale. And a lot of people have lost faith in BioWare's reputation as being one of the top RPG games. Now, with that said, with Veilguard, I think personally speaking that they are back at their best. They're getting back to that area of creme de la creme. So I would say that Veilguard is definitely an extremely important game for BioWare. And honestly, from just the parts that I have played, I really think that that the team is showing their muscle again. And I do think that this game can be extremely viable for them. I haven't been not tracking the sales, but from what I'm understanding, the game was doing well with pre-orders and all that stuff. But again, I'm not up to date on all this stuff as of right now. But I do think that this game is extremely important to remind people that the writing is still there. Even though there are new faces, the same heart of the company at its core is still there at telling very heavily narrative and character-driven RPG storytelling, if that makes any sense. I'm trying to find the best way to explain it, but yeah, unless you've been playing Veilguard yourself, only then can you fully understand and experience what I'm actually talking about. I know some people are not pleased with Veilguard. They seem to have issue with it, but I will say for me so far, I've never cried so much during sections of a game. I have been emotionally stricken. The only other game that did that to me outside of Veilguard was Inquisition, as well as Mass Effect and Baldur's Gate 3 are the only times I actually got emotional while playing a video game. And the best way to put it is that Veilguard seems to be setting bones that I didn't even know needed mending. That is a real thing to say. So again, to reiterate, this game is so important for BioWare to have longevity and for them to continue to create games, as well as also Mass Effect, because I need my next Mass Effect game. So yeah, I hope what I'm saying, I don't sound too much like a broken record, but yeah, I would definitely say it is. But I give it back to you, Nate.
Thank you so much. I'll refrain from talking on as well, because then I'll just take over the conversation. Ark, how important do you think Veilguard is to BioWare, considering everything?
I think it's extremely important. I know that a lot of BioWare fans leading up to this game for the last 10 years have been very anxious about it, especially because of the subjectively lackluster criticism from Mass Effect Andromeda and from Anthem. You're reading a lot of articles about a lot of the big names, people that have been so invested and have been very impactful in the success of Bioware games over the year, leaving the company, being laid off from the company. There's a lot of people who were working on Veilguard who are no longer in Bioware anymore, and that's not always a great message to hear. So I think a lot of people were very curious about how, like, what is this game going to be like? Is it going to be um, a multiplayer game that's trying to become a single player RPG? Is this really going to be that heavy on the storyline? Like, we all know, at least most people know, that when the very first trailer dropped, there was a lot of mixed reviews over it, and people were wondering, is this validating our fears? Is it actually happening the way that we were worried that it was going to happen? So yeah, I think Veilguard is essentially BioWare's chance to really try to prove themselves to us and try to show us this is the direction that they're trying to go. And I do like in a way that they're trying to go back to their roots as far as character-driven, story-driven storytelling goes. I was talking about this game with one of my coworkers the other day, and he was playing Veilguard, and he says it's really not for him because, and I think these are legitimate reasons, because he really misses the quote-unquote dark fantasy of Origins. He's like he, at least at face value, doesn't think the game is as dark as he wanted it to be. He thinks that the gameplay is really fun, the action gameplay is fun, but he sort of misses more of the strategic gameplay in that way. And again, like, you can argue, oh well, it's still strategic and all that good stuff, but again, like, everyone's entitled to their opinion and to their style of gameplay. So I'd like to believe that for people who like BioWare games for specific strengths, I don't think, when I think BioWare, I'm not thinking, oh, the strength of BioWare is they're able to make really dark games. That's like not the first thing that pops into my head. Like, they're great with storytelling, they're great with companions, and the list goes on, and that's like what I came for, and that's what I'm expecting out of a BioWare game, and I think the heart and the core of those are still here. So obviously your mileage may vary, and you may be interested in other things, but yeah, I'm very. We're gonna talk more about this, I'm sure, with Knight's next question, but I think it definitely will help define what their future is going to be moving forward.
Thank you so much, Og. I'll let you get in there as well, but again, I'll try to stop myself. And Noria, how about you?
Thank you so much, Knight. I think a lot of people, and by a lot of people I mean by both Mike and Hart, have already said a lot of the things that I agree with. And there's something that Ark said about how his colleague was like, oh, he misses the dark fantasy elements of Origins. And there's something I always find fascinating, and I think that this speaks to, for me personally, how Veilguard plays into the future of BioWare. Because yes, I do believe that BioWare has a future, contrary to what a lot of the grifters might make you want to believe. Like Micah, I don't know the sales numbers, but we do know that the game is tracking good.
Yeah. We
do know that the rest of the team, some of them were moved to work on Iron Man, and so a lot of them have been moved to work on Mass Effect 5.
Yeah.
And so my thoughts are all over the place. I'm trying to structure them. The first thing I would say is that I agree in that, looking at where BioWare was coming from, and say what you would, right? Because I personally liked Mass Effect Andromeda. I don't think it was the absolute best, but I enjoyed it. I think it's a very good game. I love it. I never played Anthem, but I do recognize a lot of like the backlash that Anthem got, and I think it says a lot, right? That the team was able to stick their guns and make the game that they wanted.
Yeah,
that I think speaks a lot to the future of BioWare and how Veilguard plays into that. We've seen that because I think a lot of people, when we think about this, we do not give the team enough credit because it is clear that EA wanted a multiplayer game.
Yeah.
It is clear that EA would have loved a game filled with microtransactions. It is clear that EA believes that this is a particular way in which they would find profitable. The fact that we got a game that is none of those things implies that the people within the system had to fight and define clearly to their publishers that this is what this studio is about.
Yeah.
This is what we stand for. This is the type of games that we want to make. This is the type of games that we should be making. And sure, we definitely know that it took a while for EA to come to that point. Because when a lot of people say, oh my God, it took you 10 years, it took them 10 years and this is what they got. And I'm like, this game was rebooted and restarted 3 times. This is the third time that we are getting. This is the third iteration of it, right? They've had to take elements of the things, like they've had to take elements of what it previously was to build up on it, because it makes more sense than them starting from ground zero.
Yeah.
They've been working for 10 years without any game out, and salaries are being paid, overhead costs are being covered. Like, looking from a financial perspective, it makes sense that EA would be like, you all need to give us something. And for them to be like, no, this is the kind of game that we want, this is what we want to make. I'm not going to pretend to like have center stage view into their backroom arguments, because BioWare is an odd one in the slew of studios that EA like has control over, that we got a game like Veilguard. Even with, you know, some of its hiccups, because it does have hiccups, there are certain things that I wish they had done better. But what we did get was a solid game. And I think it's a good way to show that this is a studio that knows what they want, what they're about, what kind of stories and games that they want to tell, and they are pushing for that. And it makes me very hopeful. It makes me very happy. Not a lot of Dragon Age fans are happy campers. And you know, I someone said something about how, you know, every single game Dragon Age fans have something to complain about, and they didn't say that in a disparaging way. They just said it as like, because BioWare is a studio, Dragon Age, to be precise, is a game that changes every iteration. Right. And someone was like, yeah, you know, it's sad because Mass Effect stayed the same. I'm like, Mass Effect was telling a singular story across 3 games. It has to stay the same. Right? You're following one character across 3 games. Narratively speaking, it makes more sense for that to carry all the way through. If it is that what they're trying to tell is an holistic story that wraps itself up per game, and that is what BioWare has been consistently doing with Dragon Age, the inconsistency, even though we all see it, is part of what makes Dragon Age, right? I don't know, it's probably, this is a side effect. I'm certain that they did not go out to see it, but the inconsistency, for example, for me, makes me think of Origins as Origins, and that is the hero story. And the hero story has concluded with Origins. I'm able to be like, okay, we've wrapped things up, I've wrapped things up here by Hero of the World. Dragon Age 2 makes me know that this is Dragon Age 2. This is Hawk's story. It's whole, it's complete, it's on itself. I can be like, okay, bye Hawk. Apologies for that. I can be, okay, bye Hawk. Your story has wrapped up from here. Right? The same thing with Inquisition. Inquisition is where it's now a bit different, because Inquisition sort of finished but didn't. Right? It takes one of its players and moves it forward. And by virtue of moving one of its players forward, it has to bring other players ahead, like along as well, because this person's story is incomplete without the others. But Veilguard is not the Inquisitor's story, it's Rook's story. And like Art said, we'll go into more detail with regards that in the second question, in the second of Knight's questions. But as I was saying, the fact that what I see for Veilguard is that for BioWare is insistent on the kind of story that they want to tell. It's clear that they are willing to fight for this. And so I consider it a thing of triumph, and I consider it a thing of hope, because they've put in all that work to get us to this point. And it means that for future BioWare games, they don't need to put in this same level of fight, because they've made enough of a compelling reason why. With Veilguard, they've been able to convince their overlords, the people who pay their bills, who pay their money, who pay their salaries, that this is who we are as a studio. That means they're not going to waste time with Mass Effect 5 and other future projects being like, let us explain to you who we are as a studio. They fought that fight. And I think that is something a lot of people, that is something I, for example, I'm actually pretty excited and proud about, right? So, and now moving on to what I said with regards what Arkit said, the darkness, like the dark stories. This is down to what kind of story BioWare makes. Like, Hark said, BioWare is not dark fantasy, right? They're not a Souls game. They're not a horror game. They're a game, they make, like, their stories have always been a hodgepodge mix-up of different genres together, right? You have fantasy, you have a little bit of horror. But what has been consistent across board with BioWare games is that their games are really good character studies. And so they explore this genre through a lens of being a character study. A lot of people that say, oh, dark fantasy, they always bring up Origins. And I'm like, Origins is good, but Origins is also 15 years ago. Origin is the first story, right? A lot of people don't stay the same way they were 15 years ago. Nostalgia might make you want to go back 15 years because things were cheaper. You were not dealing with all these bills. Life was way much easier. And so therefore, you're looking at things through that lens, and that is fine. We all want something comforting to return to. But most creatives will tell you that they cannot do the exact same thing every single year for 15 years. They're going to evolve, they're going to grow, they're going to do things better. They might do things worse. Doing things worse is because they are learning and trying new things so that the next time they do something else, they'll be like, okay, we've learned from that mistake. Then that is part of making art. And contrary to what some people might think, video games are pieces of art. They are art, right? It's an art form. So you cannot put that aside from that. And so therefore, when a lot of people go like, oh, Veilguard is not dark. And the question I'm always asking is, what defines dark? What do you think dark fantasy is? And honestly, I might actually end up making a video about this sometime later in the future. But what do you think dark fantasy is? Because I think a lot of people that are like, oh, dark, think that it has to be a certain way, right? There has to be rape in it. There has to be killing in it. There has to be this in it and all of that. And I'm like, those are part of it. Those are part of it. But what would you say, for example, and I'm not going to go into that much details. I'm going to generally speak it, but just in case some people have not gotten there, so that when you get there, you understand. What would you call it that an entire family had the opportunity to escape, to freedom, to safety, and could not because they fell to the whim and caprices of an echo? What does that say? By virtue of another being just being there, you're left to rot and die and lose your mind in bits, trying over and over and over again to satisfy something that treats your life like it is dispensable. I think that is horrifying because that means that there's a capacity to lose all conscious thought. There's a capacity to lose your will. And that for me, for example, is horrifying because in real life, and because, we think, oh, video games and all of that, there are different types of horror, right? There's the horror of weird ass creature, and then there's the psychological horror of imagine if this was you. Imagine if you were the one seeing death approaching, and a part of your mind is buried beneath layers of compulsion, whereby you see your death approaching and you cannot run away like everybody else is. You cannot cry out for help like your body wants you to. That is terrifying. That is horrific. That is character. That is writing. And that is something that BioWare does really well. Because I think that a lot of the times when people go like, the quips are all of that and everything, I'm like, I am entertained by the quips. Yeah. But the quips is not all the writing is. Right? Yeah. And I'm just talking generally with regards to Veilguard. When we analyze the writing in Veilguard in the game, and what it says about BioWare as a larger studio and the kind of writing we will get in the future, in future games. It means that we are also looking at the fact that how were the companion stories told? How were the side quest missions told? The random person that you run into in Dogtown who is looking for their husband and who hasn't been home, and then you find out the reason why and what is happening. The dead that resist, the people that resisted, having their desires twisted, who die as a result of it, but they're able to resist it, and then you find out what does that tell you as a story of resistance. Yeah. That is good writing. That is writing that you sit with. What does it tell you about a girl who is grieving the loss of her brother and trying to come to terms with what role she played and if it is that she could have done better to save him? What does that tell you about guilt? Yeah. About how to deal with it, how to process it? As Rook, you get to have that conversation, and who knows, maybe the person that is playing it, that is feeling guilt over something that happened that resulted in them losing someone, might realize that what they're saying as Rook to this character is something that needs to be said to them. That is good writing. So from a writing perspective, from a narrative perspective, from a willingness to fight for the story that they want to tell being told, I see Veilguard as a big positive for the future of BioWare. And as we've seen with Veilguard, with Magdara, right? Of course, Magdara was not there from the very start, but he was brought on to consult.
Yeah.
That also tells us that BioWare as a studio is aware of the loss of expertise, like the old hands that they had on board. And as a studio, they are willing to reach out to people who are familiar with that material to make sure that, okay, they are keeping the spirit of the story, of the type of story that they get to tell. We see that in Dragon Age. I would not be surprised if we see that reflected in Mass Effect as well. Maybe they bring on Casey to, to just act as some sort of consultant on certain things. Like, anything is possible. I'm not going to pretend as if I work on BioWare and I have any core idea of what is happening behind the scenes. But I personally am very hopeful. And I'm sorry, I just droned on again for another 30 minutes. People that are watching this were like, if you were to say, what's the percentage of talk time that Noria gets or makes across these videos? She's always talking the longest. I apologize. But yes, over to you, Knight. We'd love to hear your thoughts as well.
Yeah.
Thank you. So, as you all, the viewers who are wonderfully listening to this, I bet and you probably also liked the video and also mayhaps subscribed and additionally maybe commented on below. I know you did that because you're a good person and not a bad person. Anyways, so as with everyone was said here, it is Dragon Age Veilguard is very important to BioWare for a lot of reasons. Again, Return to Form because the prior two games were Andromeda and Anthem. Andromeda, I think, was generally a better game than people give it credit for, but it was very buggy at launch, and it still has some lingering bugs. But Veilguard is so stable, surprisingly stable.
It is.
I was so baffled by the patch size for patch 2, which was 258 megabytes. I'm sorry, what? Yeah. I remember when games used to be when I had some really old games, used to be literally barely a gigabyte, And Dragon Age, Veilguard's patches are so tiny, man. It's such a stable game and such a wonderfully polished game. There's no issues, bar a few glitches here and there, but they're not that game breaking. And then you have the Anthem, which is a live service game, which was also very buggy at launch, and it's not that. You can still feel the elements, the remnants of the live service in Veilguard, but you can still think that it's so important how BioWare shifted away from that, and that is very important. And with this new mindset, this new philosophy that they're going to do, which is basically say to themselves, this is who we are. We're making these single player RPGs, character focused and stuff. That now it is time for us to make Mass Effect 5, which is on a completely different engine, which is us starting from scratch. Now we can just make a game that is not influenced by the live service elements of Anthem, but is now just fully its own thing. Whatever Mass Effect will be is still up to be seen, from story to gameplay and whatnot. We can have some like vague ideas of what it is, but it is still important, from especially that all of Veilguard's team is just going on and working on Mass Effect 5. It's very important, the confidence of like, okay, we need to get this momentum, we need to keep it going, we need to still have it going, right? Because one of the poor aspects of Veilguard was the fact that the momentum was kind of lost off to Inquisition, right, for the Dragon Age team.
Yeah.
Especially after we did like 3 times, as Noria said. And that, to me, is I think really good for Mass Effect. It's gaining that momentum. It's with all these people who are just finished the Veilguard and going to a new engine and now purposely making a game that's just like single player and stuff. And that, I think, why Veilguard is very important to BioWare. It's not just important as in it's a good game, it's selling well, but it's important as it's going to indicate good shifts towards future games. And whatever Dragon Age will be as well, whatever, because it'll obviously be built on Unreal Engine, I don't imagine they're going to bring back like on the chest, like, yeah, come on guys, one more time.
No.
I imagine they're going to just use Unreal Engine 5, and whatever that, I think it'll be a better game for it. And now,
but wait, hold up. Night, give me a second. I want to just talk more on what you said, or about the fact that, because we talked about the future of BioWare, and a lot of that fire has always been like with Mass Effect. But you point out the fact that Dragon Age, right? Dragon Age at this point 5, right? Because Veilguard is 4, right? Yeah. Dragon Age 5 is thinking that far ahead to what it would be, right? We're most likely not going to use the first byte engine anymore. We're definitely going to Unreal, and just realizing that means that the things that they had to tack on and bring on board, right? Because they had no choice, because they were working with what they had. They get to leave that behind and a whole new system for themselves, right? With Dragon Age 5. And I think that is something that, as gamers, as people who love BioWare, the studio, that's something else to be, I don't know, excited about. Maybe I'm just an easily excitable person.
No, I mean, I do think it is something to be very excited about, because like
it is.
It's because here's the thing, right? I can imagine people who are, and like I also should have considered at the time when Anthem was announced to be, or like Dragon Age 4 was going to use Anthem's codebase to be something that is like skeptical about, right? Because there's a lot to be skeptical about, right? And people who said like, who left by saying like it's going to be like Dragon Age, but with it's going to be like Anthem with dragons, right? I think that was a bit too cynical, but I do understand it. But again, Mass Effect 5 on Unreal Engine, and Unreal Engine 5 compared to like when it was Unreal Engine 3 is a far better engine to develop games. And if BioWare finally learns the lessons from Andromeda and Anthem, goddamn it, please reuse the engine, please, and additionally make tools for it. Don't just be like Andromeda and Anthem were like, we're scrambling here, we have no idea how to use Frostbite engine, we're just like breaking it down, okay? Like, please use it wise.
Right, but
whatever is going to happen, whether it's going to be Dragon Age 5 or another new game, maybe a new game, that'd be cool. It is going to be a lot better because of it, So I think it is good to be excited, because like I hope it means good things in the future, right? And I think it will.
It will mean good things in the future.
Toes crossed.
Right, but I would say, okay, because Capcom is a company I love because they gave me Resident Evil, and they use the Unreal Engine. And I can say, from a person who's played it from a horror game perspective, also from, playing Dragon's Dogma 2, which also uses the same engine, I really think that BioWare as a company will have a lot of an easier time with using that software and making things look amazing, regardless of how you feel about the art style of Veilguard. Veilguard, we cannot deny, is beautiful. The world, the characters, the lighting is amazing. And imagine Commander Shepard. Just imagine me talking like Commander Shepard, saying this is the best YouTube channel on the internet, and he supports this. But just imagine Commander Shepard with Unreal graphics, and then imagine the next Mass Effect with those same type of graphics, and with their incredible artistic design with fashion and everything else. I mean, the future of BioWare, from what I've seen, it looks like it's going to be very bright, especially if they're going to be touching on the Unreal Engine 5. And most games who have used the Unreal Engine, they all look incredible. We're just talking about, again, this is just the aesthetic appeal. Again, like Knight was saying, the tools, how the UI works, especially with how the UI is in Veilguard. Hart said it best. It's so user-friendly and has so many good quality of life little features. If they can do that with Frostbite, and Frostbite is designed to be a first-person shooter engine, like the way it's designed, imagine what they can do. I'm with Noria. Is it me? Am I just easily excited because I see the possibilities? Absolutely.
So many possibilities.
Right.
So many possibilities.
Sorry to hijack on your question, but I mean, the tail end of that. But yeah, I just had to say my 2 cents.
Do you have anything to add, or do you want to move on to the next question?
In terms, while we're on the topic of the future of BioWare, and why I think this game is just important in general, is, and a lot of this is actually piggybacking off of what Noria said about this. These are the type of stories we're trying to tell. This is what we stand for as a company. These are our values. Probably is no surprise to you, I have been very disappointed and honestly, like, a little bit frustrated at the quote-unquote anti-woke culture that has just been a thing over the last couple of years. And I remember a time when being woke wasn't such a negative thing. I think a lot of people thought that it was very positive for a while. And unfortunately, as the years have gone on, there has been a large movement of, I would hope, is a very vocal minority. I hope it feels more like a majority than it actually is. But there's in general, there's just been like this big anti-woke culture. And a lot of the mixed reviews, not all, but the ones that I've at least been seeing popping up without even looking for it, it just pops up on my feed. Is
YouTube,
about,
why?
Right. Is about how awful this game is, how terrible this game is, surrounding the trans community. And as somebody who is LGBTQ plus, I feel very sympathetic towards BioWare, because I can see them being like painted into this corner right now, because I know that they understand why this is important to so many people, why bringing up this issue and just making this as an exposure, just from the idea of a mainstream game, just giving this exposure and giving this awareness to people is so important. Is the non-binary character here written perfectly? I don't think they're written perfectly, but I think that any representation, or just realizing that people like this exist, even in Thetis, people like this exist, is so important for us culturally. And I just really am so saddened by the backlash specifically for that. Like, if you're gonna have a backlash on the game, I would hope it'd be something like, oh, it's buggy, oh, the story is in general isn't great, etc., etc. But having a lot of backlash surrounding this character, and people who saw the character creator 2 weeks before the game was released and saw the gender affirmation scars and thought, we're gonna boycott this game is terrible, just from that one thing, I think is just so unfortunate. And like, why do we do this to ourselves as a society of people? Like, why do we like to pull ourselves backwards? I thought that when I first played a game like The Sims or Dragon Age Origins, and I could actually be gay, looking back on it, we've gone so forward, move forward from that, not just in games, but in movies, in sitcoms, in shows. Like the representation, positive representation of at least gay people. You look at Heartstopper, for example, has been great. Why are we reverting? Like what are people so frightened of and so scared of? That's why I think a game like this, where you have a company who is willing to stand up and to say, you know, to sort of kind of counter that, I admire a lot, even if it means that their sales or their business might be negatively impacted. I have a lot of respect for companies who try to do what they believe is right or what is aligned with their values, even if it might hurt them a little bit in a business standpoint. So yeah, I just kind of wanted to address that, since I think it's important, and it's the elephant in the room that I think people are, understandably so, are afraid to discuss, even in their own YouTube channels, because they don't want people in the comment section like saying anything or unsubscribing to them. I don't care. Like I don't care whatsoever.
Look, I'm a happy bisexual black man.
Yeah,
I do not give fucks. Come for me. Round one, we will fight. But sorry, Hart.
I look back at even racial representation, and I was watching a video the other day about racist moments in Disney movies, old school Disney movies. Like you look at Peter Pan, you look at Dumbo. And you look back, and you know, as a kid, I wasn't really thinking much of it. But now as an adult, I'm looking back and I'm like, this wouldn't fly nowadays.
No, it wouldn't.
And for good reason. In my opinion, for good reason, it doesn't fly nowadays. And so, you know, we're looking back on it and thinking, you know, that was a choice. It was a relic of its time. You know, it was a relic of its time. So I recognize that that's just the way the world was back in the day.
Right.
So the only thing that gives me hope about this subject is I believe deep in my heart that 10 years from now, 20 years from now, we're going to look back on this as gamers about all of this anti-wokeness and all this anti-trans stuff, and we will treat it the same way. We were like, that was a dark time in gaming history. And, you know, shame on us video gamers who were like on that camp, who were so like anti-trans at the time. I'd like to believe that 20 years from now we're going to be better than that. It's just, this is a weird setback at the moment. So
I think you make such a good point, and something I didn't really consider. BioWare has always been like, not necessarily I wouldn't say on the cutting edge, but definitely riding alongside a wave of other games and like developers who are putting more like LGBTQ stuff and just like having those people just represented in their games, you know. Obviously they weren't the first one to have like a gay character, but in KOTOR 1 they had like Juhani, who could only be romantic. And then like as you can like progressively see, like BioWare kept pushing it and it's always weird because BioWare has also been the center of a lot of the hate, right? For those who remember really dark time, you probably really should probably, how do I say, Gamergate, right? It wasn't a great time to be alive as a gamer, okay? A lot of terrible stuff. And during that time, a lot of the hate was also directed at BioWare. Because again, typical normal stuff. I can't believe a dude who flirts with me. That's terrible. I hate that. No, Morgan, yes, you can flirt with me. I'm okay with that, you know? Because me as a dude, I'm a woman flirting with me. You know, it's this odd thing that we look back now and still see. It's quite terrible that they do that, and it's happening again. But it's always been getting better because these things don't go away. Those people who absolutely despise Zevran or despise Anders or despise Dorian, they kind of are still there, but gay characters in media has still progressed. You know, and that's I think very important like idea for Bioware going forward as well is that they're not going to stop doing this. They're going to keep doing this, and
Exactly.
Yeah.
it's very important because the more people are familiar with characters that are outside of their worldview, the more comfortable they're going to be, and the less the sort of, oh yeah, man, I can't believe this non-binary person exists. I will literally now make my personality about hating this person. It's like, okay, these people are gone. Eventually, and we'll get a much more, as Mark said, look back on it like old Disney movies and say, yeah, this was like a pretty dark time. It wasn't really great, but we've moved past it, like people.
Go ahead. No, go ahead, Mike.
Okay. What I was gonna say, to add on to what you both are saying, see, the thing about BioWare is that once you open that floodgate, once you open that door to that level of storytelling, everybody else is going to start doing it. There's a game coming out. I believe it's one of the military shooter games. Don't know it. I'm not a fan of those kind of games, but there is a non-binary character in that game, and the amount of hatred this one non-binary actor has had to deal with a game that's a military-based game. I don't know if it's Gears of War. I don't know if it's Call of Duty. I have no idea what it is. But BioWare was one of the first companies to pioneer this. They're not going to stop. So you can bitch, you can moan, you can cry, you can claw. But once they start making Black characters, female characters that weren't sex objects, and characters of LGBT representation that weren't just a punchline, that's never going to go away. So even though, yes, I agree with you, Hark, now we're going to look back on this and be like, Lord have mercy, what the hell were them children thinking? But as, again, for the future of BioWare, this should give all of us hope. And I can say from recruiting Tosh, they have validated so much of my personal experience growing up as a kid. You guys have no idea. I'm not going to cry on camera because I did it on my own channel. But my God, that character touched, like I said, it mended a bone I didn't even know needed tending. Like, y'all don't have no idea. So even if you don't like Tosh, and not saying you have to, or what BioWare is doing currently, but we all can't deny what BioWare is doing now. And that is being extremely progressive and saying fuck you to the naysayers by what they've created. Sorry to jump on this like that, but I just think I love BioWare for it.
Like, and I really appreciate it because, like you said, it takes a lot of guns, right? Yeah. Like, and I say it. I'm sorry. No offense, because I'm definitely the only woman on here. I would say that they have bigger balls than the people that talk shit. Like,
girl,
BioWare.
Yes.
That's big as cojones. The idiots, the grifting idiots. Because I'm like, you all got no game. You all got no shit. You all got no balls.
Real talk.
You almost certainly got no convictions. Because we see them being all like, I'm gonna buy the game, but not like I hate the game. I'm just buying it to stream it. I'm like, you're driven by profit. You thrive off of hate, which means that the more the world is like, I don't have the energy to expend on hating everything that moves and breathes. You all don't have an audience anymore. And they can feel that. That is why they just keep trying to look for other things to hate on. First it was like the characters look ugly. Then it was like, oh, you can actually have top surgery scars. And I'm like, what's the problem with top surgery scars? Some people have them, some people don't.
Yeah.
Some people have dicks, some people don't.
That part.
Some people have bigger balls than your asses. And you most certainly don't have any balls at all. I'm sorry. I'm certain that people that are watching it are like, watching this video are normal, sensible people who are like knights, like regular subscribers and people from
right.
So you all know I'm not talking to you.
We're not talking to y'all. We don't mean it that way. We're talking about the people who are dumb.
I'm talking about these dumbasses, the dumb fucks.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm not talking to y'all, but because it takes so much courage to be like, this is the story I'm going to tell. I know that there might be blowbacks, and I'm certain even BioWare is surprised at this level of vitriol they are getting about it, because they know they've always gotten it. I mean, what other studio had Fox News being all like, you could get down with a sexy Asari? Lagas. Video games are turning out children games.
Especially considering that sexy scene was literally just like Pan.
It was Pan.
Shadows.
It was Pan. And
cool. I'm really titillated now, you know.
A studio like that is used to that controversy.
Yeah.
They are used to people pushing back that way. And Mass Effect 2 was them temporarily listening to that voice.
Yeah.
And making certain changes. It's why, you know, Jack, who is coded hard, like hand set. I know you can change things with the mod, but I'm like, I wanted that to be the default. But it's why you have Jack, who is coded as Pan, and you can only get with her as a male shepherd.
Yeah.
But then, which is why I said it's all about learning and experimenting, and BioWare is not a perfect studio.
No.
But they always do their best. And that is something I recognize and appreciate. Like I said, this because we've been going on for a while, and we all know that them haters, them grifters, they don't stay that long. So most of you are probably not watching up until this point. But if you are, just in case you are, I am going to hold your hands as I say this very gently.
Yes, girl, tell them.
Gaming studios are filled with your gay people, your queer people, your non-white people, your non-binary people, your women, like, do you know what that means? It means that we are going to keep making fucking diverse games. You're going to die crying,
right?
Like, on at the old days, and you cannot travel back in time.
No, not yet.
We're going to make a variety of games, and this is not to say that if what you want is the straight white experience, you cannot get it. You can get it.
Yeah,
right?
You can.
Lucanis exists.
Yeah, I'm getting represented as well because he's also short like me.
Right?
Yes, there you go. Yeah.
So you're a short king. I love you even more now.
I'm not that short, but like I'm shorter than most people. I imagine if I'd met you all in real life, I'd literally be like looking up at you and like, oh.
No, I'm pretty short too.
Nice.
No, I'm pretty short too. So we're on the short. We'll be short buddies. We'll be,
I'm the shortest in this group. I am the shortest in this group. So I have spent my entire life looking up at people, even my parents. You know, and sometimes I just like ask them, I'm like, was I adopted? And they're like, what do you mean? My mom is like, you have my nose. I'm like, yeah, but I don't have your height. What happened? Clearly, I was switched at birth. We need to find out. And then she's like, your father's mother was short. I'm like,
really?
I was switched as birth. Just admit it. Admit it. But as I was saying, like, it's not like there wouldn't be straight white characters in games.
Yeah.
Your point about it is that games just have more of us represented in them.
Right.
And BioWare as a studio has always been about that life, whereby they want to make sure that their worlds, the characters, the stories they're telling are as diverse as, you know, we are in reality. And I think I mentioned this in Ark's video. Was it Micah's video? Where we're like, you know, some people be like, oh, we enter video games
probably
to
watch
escape.
all four just to get the reference.
Just watch all four.
Yeah, you gotta watch all four.
Because you all do not know the context behind this. But you know, we mentioned that there are some people that go like, oh, I'm playing video games to escape, you know, all the diversity. And I'm like, yeah, and the diverse people are playing video games to escape your ass.
That part.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If you're playing like a video game to, because these people won't literally say like, because they don't want to like see black people. It's they'll always to escape from reality. I'm sorry, man. You have a bit of an issue if you want to escape from like literally just like different people, my man.
Yeah.
Like it's fine. It's okay, you know. Like, is it fine to like want to play a fantasy game where you're just the hero and you're doing cool things and stuff?
Yeah.
No, it's fine. That's perfectly okay. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you want to escape like your neighbor who happens to be black, I'm sorry, man. That's a bit odd. You should probably examine yourself. Yes, Ark?
I think this is a great conversation for us to be having right now because it's so timely with what's happening in recent events right now. I'm not gonna get into it because I don't want to start getting, but I'm just saying, like, for people who are listening, I think this is just something that is bigger than just BioWare. It's bigger than video games. I mentioned this in a previous discussion video that we had. I try to live by a mantra of leave the world better than you found it. Leave people better than you find them, or at the absolute minimum, do no harm. At the absolute minimum. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is, take in consideration the actions that you are taking, the words that you're speaking, the decisions that you're making that is impacting the world and your leadership, etc. And just consider, 20 years from now, 50 years from now, was I on the right side of history? Like, was I on the right or wrong side of history? And I'm just gonna say there is a right and a wrong. Like, I'm not gonna like, there is a right or a wrong. Now, the right and wrong evolves over time. I'm not gonna say it doesn't. It does evolve over time. But I try to live. I'm a person who likes to play the long game, and I try to live in a long game where do I feel like I contributed in a quote-unquote positive way to humanity, to society, to history? I hope that I am, and I challenge all of you listening to do the same thing.
Please do.
I want to end in talking about future of BioWare. I want to end with something positive.
Cool.
Because I do hope that two things, my wish list items for BioWare's future. I do hope that they don't, especially because of what happened with Anthem, I don't want to discourage them from trying new things. I think it'd be great for them to start a new franchise or a new IP. As long as it's not negatively impacting the development of their strong IPs like Mass Effect and Dragon Age. As long as they're not pulling resources out of that, I think it would be great for them to start something new and fresh that's stuck with their roots and stuck with what they're good at. I think that's the problem with Anthem, is that they sort of veered away from what they were really good at. At least as a starting point. I think once they have established their success rate of starting new franchises, then they can start experimenting like vastly like they did with Anthem. But in addition to that, I promise this is the very last thing for me. I think it'd be cool for them to revisit some of their past IPs or franchises that they haven't touched in a long time, like Jade Empire. I thought Jade Empire was a really cool setting. This is like an Asian-inspired storyline. It's got fantasy, but it's like Asian fantasy. It's martial arts. You're playing as a monk, which, most of the other games out there, you're playing as a shooter, like a soldier or a mage, wizard, rogue. Being Shang-Chi, being Shang-Chi is not something that, is very mainstream, I think, especially in Western video games. So I think that it would be a really smart thing for them. I can't imagine what a Jade Empire game would be like in today's modern technology, because Jade Empire was made a long time ago. I did Let's Play it. If you look back on it, it's definitely hasn't aged well. It's a relic of its time. It hasn't aged that well, but I still enjoyed the story. I still enjoy the premise, and I think that that would be something really fresh and new for them to sort of revisit. And I see that franchise taking off pretty well too if they do it right. So that's all I have. Sorry Night about.
Okay.
Awesome. And then let's see how long this can go. An hour or two? Let's go. So next question is Rook. So BioWare has had a lot of protagonists with the time. The original protagonist, very important. The Shadow Steel protagonist, no idea what his name is. He drove a mech, which is cool. But besides him, which is peak protagonist design, we then get to, yet again, an alien game with a weird cartoony style, okay? No idea what this weird alien shooty thing is, but probably not important. Now, we actually get to BioWare's actual game that most people know, Baldur's Gate 1, we play as Garain's a ball spawn. And then we get to Kotor, we play as Revan. Then we get to Jet Empire, we play as a Spirit Monk, and so on and so forth. BioWare's had this weird trend where all the protagonists had some sort of like foundation for our role-playing to launch off of, right?
Yeah.
Where we could have either a struggle with our own philosophy, our identity, such as Revan, and the sort of alignment of morality. And Rook is different from that. Rook is definitely a lot different from prior protagonists, especially the Wardens, but they're definitely still a BioWare protagonist. And that is the question. How does Rook fare? Does Rook's like baseline role, which is a hero, does it come through in the game? Do we have options that represent, who Rook is and allows us to express that? Micah?
Now, Rook, as you said, is a very different type of protagonist. From what I noticed from the jump, because again, just for people to know, I never played Origins and I never played DA2. I started with Inquisition, but I know of the first two games because I watched it on Hark's channel. What I will say about Rook from the jump, far more scrappier and I guess to say more edgy or rugged than the other three. Now you might say, no, Hawk had a finesse to them. Even when you played Sarcastic Hawk, and I think Sarcastic Hawk is what everybody likes to consider as the canon Hawk, the Warden, because the Warden didn't have a voice, the Warden was kind of like the protagonist from Baldur's Gate 3. You painted a personality onto them, kind of like with Link. And then the Inquisitor, unless you play your Inquisitor as a asshole, your Inquisitor kind of had a consistent personality. They seemed almost like a no-nonsense type of person. And almost wise, especially if you choose the more benevolent or more stern option. The Inquisitors seem to come off more, like more wise. Like they seem to have a no-nonsense, wise personality. If that makes they seem perfect to lead the Inquisition. That's the best way to put it when you play your Inquisitor a certain type of way. Unless you play an asshole and have Cassandra drinking saying, "You're Andraste's chosen." What the hell, man? But in my opinion, I would say that Rook is very different from that. And even though you can customize how your Rook goes, especially when you're in the room of meditation, and I think it's one of the most beautiful scenes in the room where you look into the looking glass and you get to say who your Rook is, either through their scars, through their tattoos, or not even feeling like they're living up to how Varric sees them as the hero of this story. And I like that about Rook. And you see that Rook has a vulnerability to them, despite them being very headstrong with their choices. When you see how they disrupt Soulless Ritual or your backstory, depending on which one you play, Rook is very headstrong, but Rook also has a vulnerability, especially when he's with Varric. When he's like, Varric, this happened. And, depending on who you choose in the beginning of the game, like for me, it's like, I made a decision and Harding got hurt. How would you have handled this? And I like that about Rook, because it shows Rook is headstrong, but still is learning. And that's something I think we really didn't get with Hawk or with the Inquisitor. The Inquisitor was almost like a general, like, okay, tell me what I need to know so I can make the right decision because I know what I need to do. You know what I'm saying? Hawk was even the same way. Hawk was like, well, like, especially when you're Purple Hawk and you're being sarcastic, it's like Hawk already knows the answer, but they're just giving a sarcastic response. Like, Hawk seems sure of themselves, and so did the Inquisitor. For the Warden, depending on how you play the Warden, I guess you can see it that way. But even the Warden had a sense of assurity or a sense of self that I don't think Rook has in some ways. I hope that makes sense on how I'm describing this character. Headstrong, but still learning.
Throughout the dialogue for each of the protagonists, right? There's more times where Rook is Rook questions themselves on their competency, not necessarily competency, but like on their ability to perform, right?
Yeah. Not on their ability to perform, but even when Varric says, "Look, kid, you got to take point on this," and one of the options is, "I can't replace you."
I can't,
you know,
and I always choose that.
Yeah, I like that. I like that option about Rook, because Rook, like I said, is headstrong yet vulnerable, but is also capable. If that makes any sense to what I'm saying, and it makes role playing as Rook almost more enjoyable, because it's like you're learning as you role play your character, you're also learning this character at the same time, which is unusually refreshing, if that makes any sense. I wish I had better verbiage for what I'm trying to say, but I really like what they've done with Rook. Now, I have not gotten past Act 2 yet. I'm about to enter that. I'm getting into the latter parts of Act 1. When the episodes drop, you'll see. But I would say so far, I love Rook. And Rook, I would say between Hawk, Rook, not the Warden. I would say the Warden is not my favorite of the 4 protagonists. Sorry, everybody. I know. I would say Hawk was my favorite at first until I met Rook. So that's my honest opinion on Rook. But again, I haven't beaten the game. My opinion might change. But for right now, I love my Rook. I'm totally in support of him, and I'm rooting for him. So anyone else can pick up the thread from there.
I mean, I can go, unless Nora, you want to go first. You want to go?
No,
first,
you can
Nora?
go first. You can go first. That's
I want to preface this by saying that I love all of my main protagonist characters through all of BioWare games. However, I do think that there's a lot of criticism for Rook's character that I do think are valid, and I actually do agree with in many cases. So, for example, I think one criticism overall about this game is that you can't be "quote unquote" evil in this game. You know, you can't be a bad person,
a bad boy. Yeah.
And I understand that, especially because recent games like Baldur's Gate 3 for sure gave you the ability to do that. And I push back on that a bit, because I do think that for this specific storyline, it's a story about saving the world. There's only so many things you can do flexibly of how you do that without going down to "quote unquote" an evil way. And so I think that you have to understand the limitation of that. The other limitation is that more so in this game than in Baldur's Gate 3, the Dragon Age series has always been more about the world state, the world of Thedas, versus the character. Shepard went through. The Mass Effect, at least the earlier Mass Effect games, is a story about Shepard. Dragon Age is a story about the world itself and how your character in that moment impacted the world. And so if you have too much flexibility in letting your main protagonist be evil, that can severely complicate whatever the next world state's supposed to be. In the next iteration. So with that I do disagree with the naysayers. But what I do agree with is I think that we've had less opportunity to be "quote unquote" edgier with Rook. And by that, I mean, I think a game like this could have benefited from something more like the Paragon versus Renegade system. Yeah. There's something so satisfying about having a really bad A like Shepard, who doesn't wait for the villain to monologue, and they just shoot him in the face immediately. You just interrupt them and shoot him in the face.
That was so satisfying.
It's so cool. And I think that would be a great way for a future Dragon Age protagonist to work, where you can still save the world and you can still "quote unquote" do the right thing, but you can also be a little bit more renegade about your approach. You know what I'm saying? So even with the dialogue options, I know there are certain tones. There's a tone with the fist that I think is the most renegade, is the fist one. But I honestly, even though my character didn't select those dialogue choices, I don't recall seeing this option as prevalent.
Gotcha.
As you know, and I feel like that may satisfy some of the players who want a little bit more edge, or maybe a little bit of more shadiness to their main protagonist. So that's where I do agree with some of the criticism.
Gotcha.
The other thing that that I thought was interesting about Rook, and I'm trying to remember what it was because it's I just felt, as someone who's played through most of the game, I haven't beaten Yin yet, and I'm not going to spoil anything, but I think compared to the Inquisitor, Rook overall seems to have less decisions to make than the Inquisitor did.
Yes.
By virtue of, so in Inquisition, the Inquisitor gets to sit on their throne and then like make a judgment. That like people come in with their grievances and you can choose, you know, you make a judgment on what to do about a certain person. Right. And I love that because that did help flesh out or define my Inquisitor more. Like I knew like in this sort of issue, this is where he would lean and this is why. You know, with Rook, he did have major decisions to make, but the frequency of it was less than the Inquisitor. So that's just like another criticism I have with Rook overall, is I didn't have as many opportunities to define my Rook based on their decisions. However, again, I do agree that the mirror was a fantastic way to define your Rook. And as we've said in a previous video, if we were able to play out an origin story for our Rook, I think that also would have helped enhance more about who they are. So again, I love my Rook. I think he's great. I just felt like I had less opportunities to truly define his personality and his belief system and his values in this game than in like the Inquisitor, for example.
Yeah, I can see that. So for me, for example, and you know, just jumping off of, or rather like addressing Ark's point about Rook making less decisions, the way in which I read it was like the Inquisition is like an external arm of government. Right? So the Inquisitor, as the Inquisitor, you're speaking with rulers. You have an audience with Selim. You're speaking directly with the King of Navarra through the war table missions, right? You are a recognized force, military, economic, political force. The Inquisition is meant to, and that's the reason why by the time you get to Trespasser, you've amassed so much power that literal governments are worried and want you disbanded because they know that you have the capacity to top. In fact, Trespasser shows us that whilst you were just going on around minding your business, people were primed to topple shit without you even actively making plans. So the Inquisitor is this big, it's meant to be this person, right, that, you know, falls upwards in a way, right? Rook, on the other hand, is more of an intermediary, right? Their job is to, I won't even say intermediary, their job more is to be like, I need your help, I need your help, I need your help with this, I'm trying to do this. They are asking. The Inquisitor has the power to be like, I am going to cut off all other options so that you have to do this. So to me, their level of power is different. And I agree with Micah in that I read Rook younger. And I made a video to this effect. Like I do have a full-on video on my channel where I talk about like Rook and how they like the making of a BioWare protagonist. Because personally for me, I've always seen the BioWare protagonist as roles that we are being asked as the player to play. So whether you're playing, and just as with Micah as well, I've not actually played the hero of Ferelden or Hawk because these things is like they've not done a legendary edition. Best believe that when they do, I will be on that faster than white on rice. I'm telling you about it. And because my computer can run it and I don't have an Xbox, unfortunately. Yeah. So what I've done is I've watched a lot of playthroughs and I've watched a lot of Let's Play, and I always like choose. So what I do is that like each conversations and each choices with these characters, I mentally choose what I would prefer based off of how I think they should act, and then I like to do comparisons against those that actually make those decisions. We're like, oh yeah. So I'm aligned with that, right?
Yeah.
And you know, whether when you're playing as the hero of Ferelden, for example, the story starts whether you choose the dwarf, and you know, dwarven, you can either be a dwarven noble or you can be like a commoner, the castless commoner, or you can play as, you know, in the Dalish, like a Dalish elf or a city elf in the Alien Age and all the things that happens there, and you have a clear understanding, or you're playing as human, which personally I think is the most boring, but you know, but that's just me. It's a personal opinion. Like, you all don't.
I mean, it's a personal belief that's not shared by many. Okay, 7% of life.
Look, I don't live by basic bitch syndrome. Okay, I'm just saying.
You're in a fantasy world, my guy. You should be a human dude. Come on,
right?
Be an elf. Okay,
right.
Right. So, like, depending on what you are, you're just. The hero of Ferelden is somebody that is stuck in a bad place. You start the game in a bad place. And so therefore, they kick things off with, you know, I read them more as a scraper. The hero of, did I say scraper? Sorry, I meant scrapper. God, English. Scrapper.
I mean, technically, right? I mean, there is a brothel in the game, you know?
Because I was like, it's a scraper, not scrapper, right? I read them more as I am going to fight to get through this, right? Because of whatever circumstances. And so the circumstances that you always start off is always distressingly terrible, no matter which of the origins you choose, right? Hawk, on the other hand, is somebody that loses everything over a period of like. They just keep getting hits and hits and hits, and you're like, give Hawk a fucking break. Why? This is like the worst Monday morning ever. You know, the Inquisitor is the least, and of all the BioWare protagonists, they're the ones that have the least amount of like background, and so therefore you have more of a leeway with regards how to interpret them, right? So they have the least amount of backstory, so they really do take on that role of, we're giving you, because BioWare cannot fully give you a blank page and say, run with this character. That's not the type of RPGs that they make. Those are not the type of protagonists. If it is that you've always assumed, even the people that like, you know, I want to be evil, you're not being evil in Origins. I think people think that because you can have Liliana killed, you're being evil. The only time you consciously choose to have Liliana killed is after you've played that particular quest. You've gotten to the Temple of Sacred Ashes, you decide to desecrate the urn. It's after you've done that first playthrough that you then go out of you and like, I'm choosing this because I know. The first time, the hero, the warden makes what does this do?
Yeah.
That's not evil. That's them thinking, oh, I can speak with this. I can speak. Like, I think that a lot of people, because of how, like, what they want is to be spoiled for choice. And that is fine.
Yeah.
Right? That is fine. I think that there are certain choices I wish that Veilguard will allow me to make, for example. Every single time I speak to the first warden, please note that a lot of us are still playing this game. Most of us are still in Act 1.
Yeah.
Just saying this for those watching so that you all don't go typing spoilers in the comments. But because, you know, it's necessary for us to point that out. But a lot of time, and this is where I agree with Ark, where I desperately wanted a renegade, a shepherd renegade.
Oh, yeah.
Because when I talk to that man,
ooh,
every time I talk to that man,
want to hit him.
I look at him and I'm like, you fucking dumb sack of shit.
Right.
What?
Oh, yeah. You know what?
Like, that's for me. I'm like, I'm trying to save the world, you dumbass. Why are you like this? That kind of thing. So I wish I could just be like, oops, sorry, accidentally hit you, bumped you on the head with like a coffee shoe. Of course, I would like that to happen, and then for them to be like, you just lost 1,000 warden support, and then I'll be like, fuck.
Damn it, right?
Fine though. Yes.
Right?
But that is not the type of game that BioWare plays. And like I said, Rook is not that type of person.
Right.
Because I think I see Rook as BioWare still, like we talked about in the first question in this, trying to experiment and try things out. Right? So you had the warden who was very silent, all silent protagonists, and so therefore you could imbue them with what voice you wanted and all the other blah 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 and everything else. Then, but there was still a specific role. The game was still saying that this is, you're playing a scrapper character, so therefore these are the options that you get and all of that. If you all think that Origins was a sandbox where you could play and do everything and try all the other options, that is just good writing, because now BioWare was still directing you, was still giving you a pretty linear story and saying that this is what you should do and this is what you should take. And even they were making, allowances for the different permutations, but it was still guided. Hawk was, we are voiced, but they're like, this is specifically who it is, this is who Hawk is, this is their backstory and all of that. So now they've experimented. They've experimented. They've gone from we're not doing voiceless, let's try voice, but also still give you, but also they're taking it a step further, whereby unlike the others where you got to play as different races and you had different origins, they're like, no, you are Hawk. You have to think like Hawk. Are you purple Hawk? Are you this? Like, but you have to be Hawk, right?
Yeah.
And Hawk is human, because that is what we are telling. We're telling a very human story.
Yeah.
With the Inquisitor, they took learnings and like, well, people were like, why you gotta tie us down? Why you gotta tie us down? We want to try being a lot of things. Hell, the Kunari sound like look cool. Let us get the chance to play as a Kunari. Right?
Yeah.
And so therefore, they're like, okay, let's give them more options, retain the voice element, because some people seem to like the voice, but we bring in different things, but they do not give us origins. But they gave us like tiny little tarot to give you an idea of where these characters are at. They also did not give us the Adar, which is annoying. But we, who knows? Maybe Dragon Age 5 will finally, damn it. Okay, and then Rook, I see Rook as BioWare once again experimenting and saying that, okay, people liked Inquisition, but they said it was a bit far out.
Yeah.
Right? It was not a bit far out. It was empty. It was devoid. Right? So Inquisition was kind of like sort of blank slate, like not sort of blank, like close to blank slate, like the Warden was, except for the fact that you have voices. But unfortunately, you don't have origins, like origin story. But you get to choose options, and you get to like role play who and what your Inquisition is, who and what your Inquisitor is, kind of like you do with the Warden. And then with Rook, they now said, we're gonna experiment again. And once again, like I said, because a lot of people like to compare, and I've not played their Star Wars game yet, even though I do have KOTOR. I've not played it yet. I do have plans to. Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, I have realized, are on PlayStation.
They are.
Are they?
Yeah, they are.
No.
They are.
Yeah. They're on PlayStation. They're on PlayStation. So I have plans on getting them, right? Because I'm like, that is so cool. So I'm going to definitely get that and play. So they're experimenting again, right? So with Rook, they're experimenting again, and they're like, okay, cool. What we're going to do is, people clearly liked the origin stories. They like the voice protagonist, so we're keeping the voice protagonist. They like the option of having like playing different races, so we are retaining that element, right? And so what we're going to do now is expand on, because clearly people were like, oh, you didn't really give us much information on Inquisition. So we're going to give you a bit more Inquisition, a bit more information. Not like, you're not going to get an origin story to play, but we're just basically going to give you the origin in a quick notes version of it. So you have an idea. But that is also meant to specifically be like, this is the character you're playing. And I know, once again, a lot of people complain and like to make comparisons between Mass Effect and Dragon Age. They are very different games. And like I said earlier in this video, right, you're playing one character all the way through. through. The reason why Ryder in Andromeda looks different is because for the first time, you're playing as another character.
Yeah.
You're role-playing as someone else who does not have the experience and
That
command that Shepard has.
Yeah.
They are younger, inexperienced, figuring out who they are, exploring, excited, following their father. And then their father dies and they're like, fuck,
Right.
now I have to do all of this, So they are a very marked difference. And I think about this a lot. I'm like, that is why Rook feels different, because Rook is not the Inquisitor. Rook is not Hawk. Rook is not, the Warden. Rook is Rook. And I think that for me personally, they do fare well compared to the other protagonists. This is their own story. Their own character arc is different. What BioWare is trying to say through them is different. And like Ark said, this is a story about saving the world. Yeah. Unfortunately, there's no option to be like, I don't give a shit about the world. I'm leaving. Because,
right.
Like Ark,
hey, Elganon.
Like Ark, right? Gillinan, you know what? I love power. So fuck all these idiots. Give me power. I'm gonna join your army. Like that is not Rook. If you're following,
and it doesn't fit.
It doesn't fit exactly. Because if you're following the tiny little character arc synopsis and cards you get when you choose their factions, none of those Rooks will be like Elganon, Gillinan, give me power. Fuck the common people. Because consistently, the history you get, Rook has always been, let me help the little people. Let me help those without power. I am going to stand up against people and characters of power or people in positions of power to help save people. That has always been consistent with the character. Unless it is that people do not read the faction. And I get it.
That part.
I get it. I think a lot of players came to this game wanting it to be something that it is not. And even from when you're creating your character, the game tells you, this is who Rook is.
Yeah.
This is what they're about. This is their lives. And so therefore, they then follow through that, and they do that with the other protagonists. So I think that they do stand very well. I agree. Inquisitor is my favorite.
Mm-hmm.
I know not everybody loves the Inquisitor, but I have been playing the same Lavellan for almost 7 years to death.
Right?
But honestly, Rook is a close second.
Yeah.
Rook, and depending on how the story ends.
Yeah.
Rook, I'm sorry. I was about to be like, depending on how the story ends, Rook might be able to bump, my Inquisitor. But I'm like, who am I kidding?
Nah.
Inquisitor is the number one, but Rook, you might get number 2.
Right.
So that is my very long answer.
No. I just want to. Oh, I'm sorry. What was you gonna say?
No. You can say your thoughts, Micah.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you. No, what I'm thinking, especially with the whole choice of wanting to be evil, a lot of games, it doesn't matter what game you play, you are the hero of that story. Now, when it came to Baldur's Gate 3, that really introduced this in a way even more than the Renegade option with Shepard, which I did like, because I did play as a Renegade, and I was like, I like this. But I did do an evil run with Baldur's Gate 3 off camera just to test it out. And you know what I realized? I don't like that. That's not me. That's not how I play as a player. Now, that might be for other people. And a lot of people say, no, it's role play purposes. It makes the game more diverse and edgy. I am grateful we don't have those options. I agree with you having a more renegade, because, again, going back to what I was saying, Rook seems more scrappier than the other protagonists. So it would make sense that they would be more renegade with their thought choices, especially when you have to make critical decisions. It would make sense that they would have that kind of either more renegade or more paragon type of personality. But I think the reason why they probably didn't do it because of the mirror thing, and they still wanted you to be able to define your Rook as you play throughout the game. I think that's why that's not there. But in hindsight, I do see the merits and the benefits of that arc. So when you said that, I see it now. I really do. But I still wholeheartedly love my Rook. I don't know why I like this character so much. I don't know why. For me, they tend to. Rook seems to touch or check all the boxes for me as a protagonist. But again, I haven't beaten the game. I might still say, yeah, Hawk is still my favorite of the protagonists. I don't know why. I even though I never played DA2, but I watched Hark's version of Hawk. And I love that character. I don't know why I do. I just do. But anywho, back to you, Knight.
No, thank you. I mean, like, so yeah, we got like some really insightful, well-reasoned answers and whatnot. And for me, I guess, I think Rook is perfectly in line with Bio protagonists of the past. Now, there's often, like everyone mentions, how it does seem like we don't have as many options, as it were, to be like a bit of an ass or as evil. And to me, this is what I always think about in my head, which is always, a lot of people are looking at the results of, hey, we have a lot of options, and not necessarily the process in which we get those results. What Dragon Age Origins was fundamentally trying to do is, you are playing the Warden. And what is a Warden? And the description of a Warden allows for a lot of different role-playing options, right? A Warden is to defeat the Blight at any means. What Duncan literally says at the beginning. Duncan's recruiting you, not because you're a good person, not because you're a bad person, but because you have the skills needed for a Warden. Duncan's literal backstory is him being a thief and an accidental murderer. Okay? So it's like, Wardens have a lot more opportunities to play themselves. And that is what a lot of buyers are doing, is that they're asking fundamentally, what role are you playing in this story? For Hawk, very clearly Hawk, and then for Inquisitor, it was obviously the Inquisitor. It fit the role, it fit the story of the game was telling. And same with Dragon Age Veilguard wants to have you be a hero, and I think it expresses, and I think it allows for a lot of options that express that way, especially on some of the more subtle nuances. Now, obviously, later in the game, there are some choices where you can, which I really do like, specific conversations with Solus, where you get very interesting dialogue options that will allow you to be like, yes, this makes sense for my Rook, or no, but all the options seem very fair and reasonable, right? The first one, which was obviously the hero one, and these guys covered to death, so I think I won't be adding too much, but there's one specific one, which is when you get to your faction item, such as, for me, the Grey Warden's Griffin toy. What's interesting with that one is that you can say, hey, I went into the attack, I went to save those people against the Grey Warden orders. And then the three options are, it was wrong of me to do that, I was completely in the right, or it was fair that they judged me the way they did. It makes so much sense to define your Rook like that within the confines of being a hero. And that's what I really like about like Bioware games and the way that Rook was done. There are not a lot of options to be like just an outright douchebag, right? Or literally Hitler, you know? You can't be literally Hitler. I'm sorry, guys. But there are a lot of options to define yourself as a hero. And that, I think, is perfectly in line with like everything Bioware has done. Now, should Bioware do other things like a Hero for Elden or more open statement? Sure, right? I wouldn't mind to see if they wanted to experiment with it more, or if they just felt the need of it. But I don't think what Rook is a bad protagonist at all. And I mean, there's not much else to say. This has been a particularly long one. Do anyone have any final thoughts on the topic?
I just wanted to continue from Noria's point about, and Micah's about Rook playing younger. And I found that interesting because, for two reasons. One, when they were describing Rook in a lot of promotional videos before Veilguard, they were saying that unlike other characters before, like Hawk and the Inquisitor and the Warden, Rook was not like forced into this situation. Like they were not the chosen one. They didn't have a random thing put into their hand, for example. They are trying to save the world because they have the experience and belief that they can do it. And for me, that read older. So I was a little surprised. I was a little surprised when I played the game that he was playing a lot younger. And people are explicitly calling me like young one, or they actually are describing me as a younger person. And for me, I have a lot of criticism with that because as somebody who who's one of his favorite parts about this game is the romance. You
Yeah.
have a very diverse set of romances for the males, Lucanus, Davrin, and Emmerich, in terms of their age range. So I went in not really sure who I was going to romance, so I created a hawk that was older because I wanted to be
rook,
able.
Right? You created a rook.
Yeah,
Because I
rook.
wanted a rook where it was easier for me to see him romancing Emmerich or Davrin or Lucanus. Now, I understand age is just a number. I understand that. You know, if I have to be Emmerich's twink, so be it. But so be it. But I specifically, like in my character creator, gave my rook, you know, more middle-aged, I guess, features. And so that was a little immersion breaking for me when people who clearly looked to be the same age as me, at least, were like, oh, young one or something. And I get that this is not just unique to Veilguard. Even in Dragon Age Origins, you can create a much older looking. I think there were more older options in Origins, and they still treated you like somebody in their 20s. You know?
Yeah.
So I understand that. But so I guess my suggestion moving forward is, because their character creator is so extensive, including even the option to define yourself as a trans character in the mirror. It'd be great if there was an option to define, am I young adult, am I middle-aged, or am I elderly? It'd be great. So that there's, because the moments that they mention your age, is probably like less than 5. There's probably 5 or so moments, and that's something that they could code, I'd like to think, relatively easily for people to say different things based on how old you are. So that's the one thing that I was kind of, I mentioned it a few times during my Let's Play. I was like, I'm not as young as you think I am. Like, I'm experienced. I want to be.
You know what?
You know,
he just, Canary. What did they say? No, they said black don't crack. The Q don't crack.
Maybe they see me as younger. I guess I should take it as flattery. That they're like, oh, they think I'm younger than I actually am. I don't know.
Right.
You know,
what a nice compliment.
I find it very interesting that you read that the commentary, right, the interviews, as because it said Rook is somebody that chooses this. You know, you read it as, that means Rook would be older, right? I read it more as Rook is someone that runs headlong into trouble.
That's fair.
That's how I saw.
That's fair. That's
right.
fair.
So I wasn't weird for thinking that. Okay.
I'm like, because when I replayed the Inquisitor was just like, go there, spy on them, come back, you're my first, blah blah blah, the camp, and next thing you know, oh shit, what is happening? Oh shit, what line does she say every time she comes in? What's happening here?
What's going on here?
What's going on here?
Yeah.
Like that is her being like, what on earth? I accidentally stumbled on this, right? The warden is recruited, caught in the middle of their own personal crisis, and Duncan is there as a hand to rescue them and push them towards the path. The same thing with Hawk. Of course, Hawk is not rescued by Duncan, but like with Rook, I literally read Rook as they are telling you that this person is a hothead, and which is why also with the dialogue options, right? It's more of the, you can be very straight and direct, because this is a one-track mind type of person, or even if it is that they are charming, they are still like, this is where we're going to. So I read it as Rook is the type of person that does not run away from danger or any form of challenges, right? That they see a challenge and their brain is already thinking, how do we solve this? How do I resolve this? I'm heading straight because this is where I want to go. Unlike the others that are pushed by various forces and reasons into that. And so I did not read it as age-wise. I read it more as personality-wise.
That makes sense. That does make sense.
So, which is why when I was talking to Mike and we were brainstorming, and I was telling him, this is my Rook, this is Larimer, blah 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 blah. Like I figured, I was like, she's going to be this, she's going to do this, blah blah blah, and all of that. So and interestingly enough, the game has so far made me role-playing as Larimer Ladair easy, because it's like it was made It's like it was made exactly for how I pictured her. But I do understand, and I do agree with you. Like there is no need for them to have confirmed the age, like Rook is being young, right? Because you can be any age and be a hothead, right?
Right,
You can
exactly.
be any age and take on challenges and run into things. Like it doesn't need to be age specific. And I have a mutual and a friend on Twitter, for example, who is older, and like you, Ark, created an older Rook because she wanted to romance Emmerich. And so she had been role-playing, and this is mild spoiler warnings for those that are watching and might be interested in the Emmerich romance. I'm not going to go into that much detail, but what she told me in passing was that she found it very frustrating because there's a part in the romance where Emmerich does kind of talk about you being way younger than him. And that is a concern for him with regards to your relationship.
Interesting.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it broke, broke
Immersion.
her immersion because she had been role-playing so far as an older Rook.
Right.
And now her partner is like, you're way younger than me. And she's like, in what universe, Emmerich?
Yeah. I would have trouble with that.
I'm sorry, man. Are you blind, perhaps?
Yeah, I get it. I'm made of magic, honey, and I look good, but still.
And I look good, but like, bruh, you're probably like maybe 6 months older than me.
I think the whole like idea of age being a bit of a factor in the role playing is important to consider, but it's also, and this is where it gets really difficult when we're talking about like bar games specifically, when they're in this sort of like weird hybrid nature of a very like set character like Nathan Drake, or a very openish character like the courier from Fallout New Vegas, right? It's like when you have this sort of range, you have to sort of like pick and choose which elements you should leave up to the player and which elements you should keep for yourself, right? Because here's the thing, right? If we were like, because the hero for Alden is referenced and talked about in future games and whatnot, and it's very clear that they're like young, right? That's how a lot of people think about them. And if they are like young, right, we have to then consider the whole like blight thing, which is then like a lore argument of if they were like, let's say 60, perhaps, you know,
right?
They would have heard the calling like immediately they took that. The calling would have been like,
blight would take them a lot faster. Right? Same with the other characters, because age is a huge factor in this one. Because they're eventually going to die, and so BioWare I think takes the more conservative amount of like, so they're a bit younger, so they can like be used later on, right? I don't think though that's a bad idea, because I do think there should be like I think there's a cool game idea where you can choose your maybe have like a baseline personality, or that you can like choose and go to different directions, but you can customize things like age and a lot more like detail-oriented things, you know. It's like an interesting like discussion.
What they could do, like just for example, in Origins, you play as a city elf, and when you wake up, it's your wedding day. And let's just say you made your character look older than your father, and it's like maybe you have that disease that ages you quickly. Perhaps they should say in these character choices, your age range is dust, like kind of like how you were saying with the mirror, but you're saying, okay, so I'm playing as a Lord of Fortune, and the way I'm playing Clement is that he's like someone in his mid-20s, you know, based on how I'm role playing. So they say if you're playing a Lord of Fortune, you can be between the ages of 25 to maybe like 40 or something,
right? And
that would kind of make sense. If you're a Morn Watcher, you play the ages between this, and then you can still make a younger looking character, but still be of you know what I mean? You can still make them look how you want, but you canon wise, you know your age range,
and that that makes a lot of sense. So for example, and I apologize to anybody that's like, why is Noria stuck on romance? Trust me, I played this game for the story as well. The romance is important, but I also played for the story as well.
Okay?
Right, we promise. It's not our thirst.
But you know, it's a very valid fear, right? I don't want to go into that much detail because so far I am loving Emmerich. I'm also romancing him in this game, and my rook is a late 20s, right?
Love it.
She's a late 20s. And so she's young, and all of that. And she's met Emmerich. She's been interacting with him. I've been trying my best. I've not had as much opportunities to flirt with him. There's only been one flirt option so far, and I clicked on that so fast I got whiplash because I'm like, boy, I need to show you that I'm interested in you. What is wrong with this stupid ass game? Like, come on. I've had like 5 opportunities to tell Arden, like, you're pretty. Right. And the way I'm role playing Larima, like the minute she meets the one, she stops flirting with everybody else. So everybody else keeps getting flirting options except for damn Emmerich. And I'm like, boy, let me flirt with you. But sorry, I got distracted. Like, if it is that, because Emmerich's story about his concern with his age is beautiful because it's tied with a core fear, a logical fear of his character.
That's
right?
true.
I don't want to go into
That's
what
true.
that fear is,
right,
but
right,
it's tied to the very logical fear that he
Makes
has
sense.
as a character. And so therefore, they could have put a lock on his romance. The way in which, we got in Inquisition, whereby he can still be pansexual in that he's attracted to whoever the player character is, no matter the gender. But they can then say that, if we follow up with what Micah said, whereby there's an option in the mirror scene for you to just be like, as a young adult, or as someone in my 20s, blah, 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 I'm coming to middle age now, and it would be great if I settle, just so that there's a range within which people can play, whereby after you've chosen that, just as you've locked in your gender identity, after you've locked in your age, then something then triggers whereby, because they need Emmerich to romance someone younger for the story, the narrative story they're telling for Emmerich to make sense, it can then become, the way in which Cassandra, or if it is that you're a female inquisitor and you flirt with Cassandra, and it takes her a while, but she eventually gets, because like my girl is a bit slow on the uptake, because she's like, oh yeah, sure, of course, you're complimenting my sword. I know I have great form. I'm like,
right,
Cassandra, I'm complimenting more than your sword, but sure, no problem.
Right, okay.
So like, the way in which you had with Inquisition or with Colin, like, with what Hart said about Colin, and like Colin be like, he's blushing and all of that, because like, oh shit, I did not realize that you as a male inquisitor, you are hitting on him. That the way in which they can subtly show you that you're locked out of that romance. They can do that with Emmerich, whereby it then becomes, Emmerich only romances younger Rook. Older Rook is not a romance option, because that way they can still tell the very beautiful, compelling story that Emmerich's emotional arc is, and people are aware. So if you want to romance Emmerich, kind of like if you want to romance Solus, best make sure that you're a female elf or nothing. If you're romancing Colin, make sure that you're not a Kunari,
or dwarf.
Strict, or dwarf, or male, there are strict parameters within which they can operate. You can do that because it's needed for their story. And even I can say that it's not absolutely needed for Inquisition, except for the fact that people's sexualities, and that is something valid to explore. But in this one, because the age is a core part of the emotional narrative arc that we're going through with Emmerich, it would have been a great way to do that, and we would have still gotten a compelling story. People that wanted to romance him would know that, okay, I need to role play as a younger Rook, and so they would not be, their immersion will not break when that conversation happens, because once again, it's part of his narrative. So yeah, Mike, I honestly think that those are little ways in which we can elevate the story, and it's already an amazing, fantastic story.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right. That was a lot said. Does anyone else have anything else to say?
I'm good.
No, I think I'm done. At last.
Well then,
finally.
well then. I mean, again, I want to say like this has been like absolutely amazing. I absolutely love talking to like anyone and everyone. If you know like my videos, anyone who's coming from their channel, you might notice something if you maybe scroll down the comment section. I seem to reply to literally everything, even the dumb ones. So I do like talking. Okay, so this is really great for me. I just like hearing about what people are thinking, what they're saying, and I just want to know a lot about things because I'm just that kind of person. And everyone's here validated me in that experience. So yeah, again, check them out. We have Let's Play Micah in the description. We have Angel's Arts, Park. in the description, and we have Chronicles of Nora in the description. Do any of you want to have any final words?
Just thank you so much, Knight, for having us and hosting us this video in your channel. It's been a great conversation.
It has.
And hope to maybe be able to do this again sometime.
Yay!
I second that. I second
that as well. And to those watching, we hope you're enjoying Veilguard because it is a beautiful game.
Yes.
Well, that's amazing. And also, you may have noticed something. This is weirdly highly edited, more than my usual videos. Okay, you can thank Let's Play Micah for really absolutely hard work of just, editing this video for me. Okay, man, thank you so much. I would have died on this floor. Okay, legitimately. I would have been gone from this mortal coil. Yeah, again.
My pleasure.
We talked about a lot, and I do think these are like at least the ones that I chose. I wanted to talk because I feel like it's very important for BioWare going forward and analyzing the sort of like reasons why they do stuff, And I think we're doing that. So again, so I don't continue this for any too long. Thank you all. I hope you enjoy. Perhaps consider liking, maybe even subscribing, and comment down below what you think. And check out every one of the parts of the videos in this little series. And enjoy. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.